I recently interviewed with a company and was rejected. When I asked why, the recruiter told me that the company policy is not to give feedback from interviews for legal reasons. How am I supposed to improve if they won't tell me what I did wrong? Wow, Jeff, I have to say that's a great question. So, okay, some larger companies do have very rigid policies on what they allow to be said to either to third parties about either people that have interviewed with them or even people that have worked for them. Okay, you can often find with companies when you're trying to get references from them. Okay, very often a company will only give a what they call a factual reference, which is okay. We will confirm that John worked for us from March the 18th, 2010 to April the 24th, 2014. But they won't give any other details. Or they may say, and this was his job title, and his reason for leaving was he went to find another job or something, okay? But won't ever necessarily give any details, okay? Equally, a lot of companies won't give any formal feedback as to why somebody didn't get the job. And unfortunately, this is because the world has become more and more litigious, and people have found themselves, or companies have found themselves on the wrong end of lawsuits through defamation or libel or slander or whatever. All right. So for that reason, companies are certainly bigger and more sort of structured and process-driven companies are becoming less and less willing to provide accurate feedback. Now, your recruiter may be able to get some kind of off-the-record comments from a friendly hiring manager or someone like that. If HR are basically saying, listen, it's just a binary yes or no answer. Let's assume, for the sake of the discussion, that you're not going to get anything from that company at all. All right? Well, to that, I would say two things. Number one, this shouldn't be the only company you're interviewing with. Okay? And the likelihood is how you interview with one company is much the same as how you've interviewed with others. Okay? And okay, there's going to be variances in terms of personality and the questions that they ask and so on. But fundamentally, if you did, say, 3 interviews in the course of a week, all things being equal, the interviews are probably going to be equal. If your frame of mind was the same and the interviewers were broadly the same and broadly asking the same sorts of questions, then the likelihood is that your interviewing result would probably be the same. So if you've interviewed with 3 or 4 companies, don't get too hung up on what this one particular company said. Focus on the feedback that you're getting from the others, okay? However, if you're not getting any feedback at all, what I would strongly recommend is to speak to your personal network, to friends, to family, to colleagues, to a former boss, someone like that, and ask them, mention to them confidentially that you're in an interview search and you feel that you need to brush up on your interview skills, okay? Just ask them to interview you. Maybe even do it on Zoom and record it and then watch it back, okay? Get them to give you feedback as to what they felt. And then if you're doing it on Zoom and you've recorded it, then watch it back yourself and see how you came across, okay? And then compare it to some of the stuff that we talked about yesterday, how you came across, whether or not the primary questions that we talked about that almost always come up, whether or not you've got polished answers for those, okay? How fluent you came across, how credible you came across, whether or not when they asked you about your a project you were successful in, that you knew exactly what project you were talking about and could reference times, dates, locations, the amount of people involved, exactly what the objectives were, what the expectations of those objectives were, and how you fared against them, lessons that you learned, achievements, and so on and so forth. The more fluent and polished you are, the more credible you'll be. Okay, so that's really what I would recommend in terms of how to approach that. it is tricky when someone's not giving you feedback. But at the end of the day, there are definitely other ways to access feedback or to get some suggestions on how you can improve your interview technique.